There is a place where time moves differently, where the hours stretch like honey and the days unfold with the patient rhythm of sap rising through ancient trees. This is the story of Millbrook Farm, a maple syrup farm tucked into the rolling hills of Vermont, where 3 generations have tended the same sugar maples, and where the changing seasons mark not just time, but a way of life that has remained unchanged for over 100 years. The farm sits in a valley, protected on 3 sides by gentle slopes covered in maples. Sugar maples mostly, their trunks thick and gnarled with age, their branches reaching upward like open hands. In late February, when the world is still caught between winter and spring, when snow still blankets the ground, but the sun gains strength each day, the farm begins to wake from its winter stillness. Samuel Pritchard stands at the kitchen window of the old farmhouse, a mug of coffee warming his hands. He is 63 years old, with silver hair and weathered hands that tell the story of a lifetime spent working this land. The kitchen is quiet except for the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall and the occasional crackle from the wood stove. Outside, the world is painted in shades of white and gray and the deep brown of tree trunks against snow. He watches as the sun climbs over the eastern ridge, painting the snow with shades of pink and gold. This is the time he loves best, these early morning hours when the farm is still sleeping, when he can stand here with his coffee and simply observe the world coming to life. A chickadee lands on the bird feeder outside the window, then another. They move with quick, purposeful energy, their tiny bodies perfectly adapted to the cold. Behind him, he hears the stairs creak. His granddaughter Emma appears in the doorway, wrapped in an oversized cardigan, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She is 26, home for a few months after finishing graduate school, trying to figure out what comes next. She pours herself coffee and joins him at the window without speaking. This is their morning ritual, this shared silence. "It's time," Samuel says quietly, and Emma nods. She knows what he means. The sap will run soon. Already, they've had 2 days where temperatures climbed above freezing during the day and dropped below freezing at night. This is what the maples need, this freeze-thaw cycle that creates pressure in the trees, pushing the sap upward from the roots. After breakfast, they bundle into warm clothes, layers of wool and fleece, insulated boots, hats and gloves, and walk out into the sugar bush, the grove of maple trees that covers 40 acres behind the farmhouse. The snow crunches beneath their feet, and their breath makes clouds in the cold air. Samuel carries a drill and a handful of spiles, the metal taps that will be inserted into the trees. Emma carries a bucket of plastic tubing. They walk among the trees in comfortable silence, following paths they've walked countless times before. Samuel stops at a large sugar maple, its trunk easily 3 feet in diameter. He brushes snow from the bark and studies the tree with the careful attention of someone who has been reading trees all his life. He selects a spot about 4 feet from the ground, clear of previous tap holes, and begins to drill. The sound of the drill breaks the morning quiet, but it is not harsh, just a steady, purposeful sound that belongs here, as much a part of this place as the wind in the branches or the call of crows. Samuel drills at a slight upward angle, about 2 inches deep, and when he withdraws the drill bit, they both lean in to look. Already a bead of clear sap is forming at the hole, catching the light. "There she is," Samuel says softly, with satisfaction. He inserts a spile, tapping it gently into place with a small hammer. Emma connects a length of tubing to the spile, running it down to join the network of lines that will carry sap from hundreds of trees down to the collection tank near the sugar house. They move from tree to tree in a rhythm that is almost meditative. Drill, insert spile, connect tubing. Each tree is different, each one known to Samuel like old friends. This one, with a low branch that curves like an arm. That one, split by lightning years ago but still thriving. The grandmother maple at the center of the grove, largest of all, which was mature when Samuel's grandfather first tapped it. The morning passes in this way, quiet and purposeful. By midday, they have tapped 200 trees, and Samuel's back aches in the familiar way it does at the start of sugaring season. They return to the farmhouse for lunch, their cheeks red from the cold, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that the season has begun. That night, as Emma lies in her childhood bedroom under heavy quilts, she listens to the sounds of the old farmhouse settling, the tick of the radiator, the whisper of wind around the eaves, the distant hoot of an owl. She thinks about the sap beginning to flow through miles of tubing, drip by precious drip, pulled by forces as old as the trees themselves. It is a comforting thought, this patient gathering, this transformation that will occur in the days ahead. She closes her eyes and feels sleep approaching. Like a gentle tide, the sugar house stands at the edge of the maple grove, a weathered building with board and batten siding and a distinctive cupola rising from the center of the roof. It is a simple structure built by Samuel's grandfather in 1947, but to Samuel it is as beautiful as any cathedral. Inside, it holds the evaporator, a long, shallow pan where sap will be boiled down into syrup, and all the equipment needed for the ancient alchemy of maple sugaring. On the third morning after they began tapping, Samuel walks down to check the collection tank. The thermometer on the porch read 38 degrees when he left the house, and yesterday it reached 45. Perfect weather for a sap run. As he approaches the tank, he can hear it, the sound of sap dripping into the tank with a rhythmic plink, 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 like rain on a metal roof. He lifts the cover and peers inside. The tank is already a quarter full, several hundred gallons of clear, slightly sweet sap. He dips a finger in and tastes it. Fresh, clean, with just a hint of sweetness, like water that has passed through sugar and remembered the experience. It takes 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. The trees give generously, but the transformation requires patience and time. Samuel returns to the house to find Emma already up, making breakfast. "Good run last night," he tells her. "Time to fire up the evaporator." After breakfast, they walk together to the sugar house, carrying kindling and firewood. The building has been cold and dark all winter, but now it is time to bring it back to life. Emma opens the door, and they step into the familiar space. Everything is as they left it last spring, the evaporator gleaming and clean, the bottles and filters stored neatly on shelves, the firewood stacked against the far wall. There is a ritual to starting the fire, and Samuel moves through it with practiced ease. He opens the door to the firebox beneath the evaporator and arranges kindling in a careful structure. Crumpled newspaper at the bottom, then small twigs, then larger pieces, building up to split logs. He strikes a match, and the paper catches immediately, the flame spreading quickly to the kindling. Within minutes, the fire is crackling and warm, orange light dancing on the walls of the sugar house. Samuel feeds larger pieces of wood into the firebox, building the fire slowly, letting the evaporator heat gradually. Emma opens valves, and sap begins to flow from the holding tank into the evaporator, filling the long, shallow pan with clear liquid. As the fire grows hotter, the sap begins to warm. At first, nothing seems to happen. The sap just sits there, clear and still. But slowly, imperceptibly, it begins to change. Small bubbles form at the bottom of the pan. The temperature climbs. And then, as the sap reaches boiling point, the sugar house fills with steam. This is the magic moment, the one Samuel never tires of witnessing. The steam rises from the evaporator in great billowing clouds, escaping through the cupola in the roof. It fills the sugar house with warmth and moisture, carrying with it the sweet smell of boiling sap. A smell unlike anything else, subtle and complex, like spring itself has been captured and concentrated. Emma stands near the evaporator, watching the sap boil. The surface is alive with motion, bubbles rising and bursting, the liquid in constant roiling movement. The heat from the fire is intense here, and she has shed her jacket despite the cold outside. She feels the warmth on her face, breathes in the sweet steam, and feels something settle inside her, a sense of rightness, of being exactly where she should be. Samuel tends the fire, adding wood every few minutes, keeping the boil steady and strong. This is work that cannot be rushed, cannot be hurried. The sap must boil for hours, the water slowly evaporating, the sugar content gradually increasing, the liquid darkening from clear to pale gold to amber. It is a process that requires constant attention, checking the fire, monitoring the temperature, making sure the levels stay right. As morning turns to afternoon, neighbors begin to arrive. This is tradition too. During sugaring season, the sugar house becomes a gathering place, a warm refuge where people stop by to check on the progress, to share news, to simply be present for this yearly ritual. Old Tom Hansen arrives first, stamping snow from his boots before entering. He is 84, a retired farmer who has known Samuel his whole life. He pours himself coffee from the pot that always sits on a ledge near the evaporator and settles into one of the chairs against the wall, content just to sit and watch and feel the warmth. "Good run this year?" he asks, and Samuel nods. They fall into easy conversation about the weather, about the trees, about other sugaring seasons they've witnessed. Their voices are quiet, unhurried, blending with the crackling of the fire and the bubbling of the boiling sap. The Whitfield family arrives next, parents and 2 young children who press their faces to the glass of the evaporator door, watching the fire dance. Emma shows them how to test the temperature, how to tell when the sap is approaching syrup. The children are fascinated by everything, asking questions in their high, clear voices. How do trees make syrup? Why does it have to boil? Can we taste it? As the afternoon light begins to fade, Samuel checks the density of the boiling sap with a hydrometer, a glass instrument that floats in the liquid and measures sugar content. Not yet, but getting close. The color has deepened to a rich amber, and the smell has intensified, filling the sugar house with sweetness. By evening, the first batch is ready. Samuel carefully draws off the finished syrup, filtering it through felt to remove any sediment, pouring it into glass bottles, that catch and hold the golden light. This first syrup of the season is the lightest in color and the most delicate in flavor, what they call fancy grade, prized for its pure, clean maple taste. As darkness falls and the visitors head home, Samuel and Emma remain in the sugar house, tending the fire, watching the next batch boil. The building glows from within, light and steam pouring from the cupola, visible across the valley. It is a beacon, a sign that spring is coming, that life continues its ancient cycles. Walking back to the farmhouse through the cold night, Emma looks up at the stars, impossibly bright and clear in the winter sky. She feels tired in the good way, muscles pleasantly weary, face flushed from heat. Behind them, the sugar house windows glow warm and golden. She thinks about all the seasons this building has seen, all the fires lit and tended, all the sap transformed into sweetness. There is something profoundly comforting in this continuity, this connection to the past. The next 2 weeks fall into a rhythm as old as the farm itself. Every morning, Samuel wakes before dawn and checks the thermometer, reads the sky for weather, walks down to see how much sap the night has brought. Some mornings, the tank is nearly full, and they must boil all day to keep up with the flow. Other mornings, when temperatures haven't cooperated, or when a cold snap settles in, the collection is slow, and they take the opportunity to bottle the syrup they've made, to clean equipment, to prepare for the next run. Emma finds herself falling into this rhythm too, her days shaped by the needs of the sugar bush and the evaporator. She wakes to the sound of her grandfather moving around downstairs, dresses in layers, joins him for coffee in the quiet kitchen. They walk out together to check the collection, to assess the day ahead, then to the sugar house, where the fire must be lit and tended, where hours pass in the warm, steam-filled space, while sap transforms into syrup. There is something meditative about this work, Emma discovers. The repetitive tasks, splitting firewood, stacking it near the evaporator, feeding it into the firebox every few minutes, create a kind of moving meditation. Her mind empties of the anxiety that has plagued her for months. All the questions about what to do next, what path to take, what the future holds. Here, in the sugar house, there is only the present moment, the fire to tend, the sap to boil, the careful monitoring that ensures everything proceeds as it should. On days when the sap runs heavy, Samuel's friends arrive to help. These are men and women who have known the farm all their lives, who helped Samuel's father sugar before him, who remember when the operation was smaller, when they used buckets hung on individual trees instead of plastic tubing. They work together with the easy coordination of people who have shared this labor for decades, splitting firewood outside while someone else tends the fire, rotating shifts so no one gets too tired. They tell stories while they work, stories of other sugaring seasons, of the year the late freeze damaged half the taps, of the year the sap ran so heavy they boiled for 3 days straight, of the time a bear wandered into the sugar house, attracted by the sweet smell. The stories are familiar, told and retold, but they never grow old. They are part of the tradition, as essential as the fire and the sap itself. Emma's grandmother Helen comes down to the sugar house most afternoons, bringing thermoses of coffee and plates of cookies, checking on their progress with the practiced eye of someone who has overseen this operation for 40 years. She is 79, sharp as ever, her white hair pinned up neatly, her eyes bright. She tastes the syrup as it comes off the evaporator, pronouncing judgment on the color and flavor, comparing it to other years. "This is good," she says, holding a small glass jar up to the light. "Not as light as 98, but better body than last year. The trees are happy." She believes the trees have moods, are affected by more than just weather, by the moon, by their own mysterious rhythms, by factors no one fully understands. Samuel doesn't disagree. He has tapped these trees for 45 years, and he knows they are more than just wood and bark and sap. They are alive in ways that resist easy explanation. One afternoon, when business is slow and the sugar house is quiet, Emma asks her grandfather why he never left the farm, never pursued other opportunities. He is silent for a long moment, feeding wood into the firebox, watching the flames leap and dance. "I went to college," he says finally, "studied forestry at the university. My father wanted me to have options, to be able to choose this life, rather than have it be my only possibility. I had job offers when I graduated, good ones, with the Forest Service, with timber companies. But when I came home for sugaring season that spring, stood in this very sugar house and smelled that first boil, I knew I couldn't leave. This was my place. These trees, this land, this work. It was part of me in a way nothing else could be." He looks at her, his eyes kind. "I know you're trying to figure things out, Emma, where you belong, what you should be doing. There's no rush. The answers will come when they're ready." Emma nods, feeling tears prick her eyes for reasons she can't quite name. She thinks about her life in the city, the apartment she shares with roommates, the job she wasn't sure she wanted to return to, the restlessness that has plagued her for months. Here, in this steam-filled sugar house, watching sap transform into syrup through the alchemy of heat and time, she feels something shift inside her. Not an answer exactly, but a quieting, a sense that perhaps she doesn't need all the answers right now. As the light fades and they prepare to close up the sugar house for the night, Emma steps outside into the cold evening air. The sky is turning purple and pink in the west, and the first stars are appearing. She can hear the spring peepers beginning their evening chorus down in the marsh, tiny frogs whose calls signal the true arrival of spring. The sound is high and sweet, hundreds of voices joining together in a symphony as old as these hills. She breathes deeply, filling her lungs with the cold, clean air, and feels a profound sense of gratitude for this place, for her grandparents, for the trees that give their sap so generously, for the fire and the steam and the transformation happening inside this simple building. Tomorrow they will wake and do it all again, and somehow that feels not like monotony, but like a gift. This repetition, this ritual, this connection to something larger than herself. As March deepens, the character of the days begins to change. The snow recedes, revealing patches of brown earth and last year's leaves. The sun gains strength, rising earlier, setting later, warming the air more thoroughly each day. The sap runs more unpredictably now, heavy one day, barely a trickle the next, as temperatures swing wildly between winter and spring. Samuel watches the weather with increasing attention. Soon, the trees will bud, and when that happens, the sugaring season will be over. Sap collected after budding has a bitter taste, unsuitable for syrup. They have perhaps 2 more weeks, maybe 3 if they're lucky, and the cold weather holds. The syrup they make now is darker, with a stronger flavor than the early season's delicate fancy grade. They call it Grade A Dark Amber, and while it's not as prized by some, Samuel prefers it for its robust, complex maple flavor. This is the syrup he uses on his own pancakes, the one he gives to friends who appreciate its depth and character. One warm afternoon, when the temperature climbs into the 50s, Samuel decides to show Emma something he's been saving for the right moment. They walk up into the sugar bush, following a path that climbs the western slope of the valley. Emma hasn't been this way before. They've been working the lower groves, the ones closest to the sugar house. They climb for 20 minutes, the path growing steeper, their breath coming harder. Emma can feel her muscles working, feels sweat forming despite the cool air. Finally, they reach the top of the ridge, and Samuel leads her off the path through trees to a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stands the oldest tree on the property, a massive sugar maple that Samuel's grandfather called the grandmother tree. Its trunk is so wide that 3 people could barely circle it with their arms outstretched. Its branches spread across half the clearing, and Emma can see that many of them are dead or dying. The tree is ancient, probably over 300 years old, and it shows its age in bark thick and deeply furrowed, in the hollow at its base where its heart has rotted away in the gap-toothed pattern of its branches. "We don't tap her anymore," Samuel says quietly. "Haven't for 30 years. She's earned her rest. But I like to visit her, especially during sugaring season. Seems right, to acknowledge her, to thank her for all she's given." They stand in silence, looking up at the ancient tree. Emma tries to imagine all this tree has witnessed. 3 centuries of seasons, of storms and droughts and perfect springs. It was here before the farmhouse was built, before any white settlers came to this valley, growing slowly in this forest that covered these hills long before humans thought to harvest their sweetness. "She's dying," Samuel says. "Has been for years. Might last another decade. Might fall in the next big storm. When she goes, I'll mill some of the wood for furniture. She deserves that respect, to be useful even in death. But part of me will mourn her, like I'd mourn an old friend." Emma understands. She feels it too, standing here, the presence of this tree, the weight of all those years, the slow, patient life it has lived. She thinks about continuity, about how this tree was here long before her grandfather, before her father, before her, and will in some way persist after them all. Its wood becoming furniture, its leaves becoming soil, its seeds becoming new trees in the endless cycle of life. They sit at the base of the tree, their backs against its massive trunk, and eat the sandwiches Helen packed for them. The sun is warm on their faces, and they can hear birds singing in the branches, chickadees and nuthatches, the first robins returning from the south. Spring is truly coming now. Emma can feel it in the softening earth, smell it in the air. "I've been thinking," Emma says, "about staying, not just for sugaring season. Maybe longer." Samuel doesn't respond immediately. He chews his sandwich, looks out across the valley spread below them. Finally, he says, "Your grandmother and I won't be able to do this forever. Another few years, maybe 5 if we're lucky, and our health holds. We'd hoped your father might take over, but that's not his path." He pauses. "The farm will need someone. The trees will need someone who loves them, who understands what this work means. Emma nods slowly. She hadn't realized until now that this is what she's been moving toward, that this is the answer her heart has been seeking. Not a dramatic revelation, just a quiet recognition. This is where she belongs. This work is what she's meant to do. The city, her degree, the career path she thought she wanted. All of that seems distant now, part of someone else's life. "I have a lot to learn," she says. "We have time," Samuel replies, "and you already know more than you think you do. You've been learning since you were a child, summers spent here, helping with small tasks, absorbing the rhythms of this place. The rest is just details." They sit for a long time at the base of the ancient maple, watching the sun move across the sky, feeling the warmth on their faces. Below them, the farm spreads out, the white farmhouse, the red barn, the sugar house with its distinctive cupola, the maple groves covering the hills. It is not a large operation by commercial standards, but it is theirs, and it is perfect in its own way, perfectly suited to this land, to these trees, to this life. When they finally descend, walking slowly back down the hill, Emma feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. A sense of purpose, of direction, of coming home to a future that feels right and true. The path ahead is clear now, not because all questions have been answered, but because the right questions have finally been asked. The final days of sugaring season arrive with a warmth that signals winter's true end. The temperatures no longer drop below freezing at night, and the maples, sensing spring, begin to swell their buds. Samuel checks the trees daily now, looking for the telltale swelling that will end the harvest. On a Thursday morning, after checking the collection tank and finding only a few inches of sap, Samuel announces that today will be the last boil. Emma feels a surprising sadness at this news. She has come to love these days in the sugar house, the heat and steam, the sweet smell, the steady rhythm of tending the fire and watching the transformation. They decide to make it a celebration. Helen spends the morning cooking, preparing a feast for the friends and neighbors who have helped throughout the season. The Whitfields will come, and Tom Hansen, and the Mitchells from the next valley, and Samuel's cousin Robert with his wife Marie. They will have a sugaring off party, the traditional end-of-season celebration. By early afternoon, the sugar house is full of people. The evaporator boils cheerfully, processing the last of the season's sap. Outside, someone has set up a long table, and Helen and Marie are arranging platters of food: ham and biscuits, baked beans, coleslaw, apple pie. But the real treat, the traditional centerpiece of a sugaring off party, is something special. Samuel pours fresh, hot syrup directly onto pans of clean snow that the children have packed down hard and smooth. The hot syrup hits the cold snow and immediately begins to thicken and congeal, becoming taffy. The children use wooden sticks to gather up the taffy, pulling it free from the snow, creating maple lollipops that are chewy and sweet and taste like the essence of these hills. Everyone tries the sugar on snow, even the adults, and Emma watches as faces light up with delight at this simple treat. There is something almost magical about it, this direct transformation from tree to candy, bypassing all the modern processes and machinery, bringing them closer to the source. Inside the sugar house, old Tom Hansen settles into his favorite chair and begins to tell stories. He remembers sugaring as a boy when everything was done with buckets, when you walked from tree to tree with a wooden yoke across your shoulders, gathering sap that sloshed and spilled with every step. He remembers when they boiled over wood fires in open pans, when the process was even simpler, more primitive, closer to what the indigenous peoples had done for centuries before Europeans arrived. The Abenaki taught the first settlers how to tap maples, he says. Showed them which trees, what time of year, how to collect the sap and boil it down. Before that, no white person knew you could get sugar from a tree. Amazing when you think about it, how someone first figured it out, discovered this gift the maples give us every spring. Samuel's father, Tom explains, used to say that maple sugaring was the only agriculture that made the land more valuable by leaving the trees standing. You didn't have to clear the forest, didn't have to destroy the ecosystem. You just had to care for the trees, keep them healthy, and they would give you their sweetness year after year, generation after generation. As afternoon turns to evening and the last of the sap is drawn off as finished syrup, there is music. Robert has brought his fiddle, and he plays old songs, Celtic tunes that the earliest settlers brought with them, American folk songs, traditional sugaring songs that no one knows the origins of anymore. People sing along to the ones they know, hum to the ones they don't. The music fills the sugar house, blends with the crackling fire and the bubbling evaporator, becomes part of the celebration. Emma stands slightly apart, watching it all, the people gathered in community, the children running and playing, the old friends sharing stories, the music and laughter and warmth. She thinks about how this scene has been repeated here for generations, how her grandfather stood here as a child watching his own grandfather tend the fire, how the cycle continues unbroken, a chain of connection stretching back to the first person who tapped the first maple and discovered its gift. As darkness falls and the party begins to wind down, as people start making their way home with bottles of syrup carefully packed in boxes, Emma helps her grandfather bank the fire. They let it burn down slowly, safely, until it's just embers glowing in the firebox. The evaporator cools, the steam gradually dissipates, and the sugar house grows quiet. Samuel and Emma stand in the doorway, looking back at the space that has been the center of their world for these past weeks. In the dim light, the evaporator gleams, everything clean and ready for next year. The wood stove ticks as it cools. The smell of maple syrup hangs in the air, sweet and lingering. "Another season done," Samuel says softly. "A good one, too. The trees were generous this year." "Grandpa," Emma says, "I want to learn everything, all of it. How to tap the trees properly, how to maintain the tubing system, how to judge when the syrup is done, how to manage the sugar bush for health. I want to understand the business side too, the customers, the bottling, the marketing. I want to know everything you know." Samuel turns to her, and in the dim light, she can see tears in his eyes. "We'll start in the summer," he says. "There's always work to do, maintaining equipment, checking the trees, planning for next season. We'll have time. You'll learn." They walk back to the farmhouse together through the spring darkness. The night is alive with sounds, spring peepers singing in the marsh, the hoot of a barred owl, the rustle of wind in branches that will soon leaf out. Above them, stars wheel in their ancient patterns, the same stars that have looked down on this farm for all its history. In the farmhouse kitchen, Helen has left lights on, and a note saying there's food in the fridge. But Emma isn't hungry. She feels full, not with food, but with something else, something harder to name. Contentment, maybe. Purpose. A sense of having found the place where she fits. She climbs the stairs to her room, strips off her clothes that smell of wood smoke and maple, and crawls under the quilts. Through the window, she can see the outline of the maple trees on the ridge, dark against the starlit sky. She thinks about sap flowing through their trunks, about the annual miracle of their giving, about the slow, patient work of transforming sweetness from tree to cup. Sleep comes easily, naturally, like sap flowing downhill, like water finding its level, like anything finding the place where it belongs. The weeks after sugaring season bring a different pace to the farm, but no less work. The sugar house must be thoroughly cleaned, every surface scrubbed, every piece of equipment maintained and stored properly for the months ahead. The tubing in the sugar bush must be checked for damage, any broken lines repaired, any problems noted for improvement next year. Emma throws herself into this work with an energy that surprises even her. She has always been a quick learner, but here on the farm, she discovers a capacity for patience she didn't know she possessed. Some jobs take hours, like walking every line of tubing through the forest, checking each connection, each tap hole, making notes about trees that might need attention. It is slow work, methodical, but she finds she doesn't mind. There is satisfaction in doing a job thoroughly, in knowing that this careful attention now will pay dividends next season. Samuel watches his granddaughter's transformation with quiet joy. He sees her becoming more confident each day, more comfortable with the work, more connected to the land and the trees. They spend hours in the sugar bush together, and he teaches her to read the trees, to recognize signs of stress or disease, to understand the relationships between different species, to see the forest as a complex, interconnected system rather than just a collection of individual plants. A healthy sugar bush is diverse, he explains one morning as they walk between the maples. Not just sugar maples, though they're the heart of it. You need the other species too, the birches and beeches, the hemlocks and oaks. They all support each other, create the right conditions, protect the soil. And you need trees of different ages. That's why we only tap maples that are at least 40 years old and at least 10 inches in diameter. We need younger trees coming up, replacing the old ones as they die. It's all about balance, about thinking in terms of generations, not just seasons. Emma asks questions constantly, trying to absorb everything, to build the foundation of knowledge she'll need to steward this land properly. She learns about the mycorrhizal networks in the soil, the fungal threads that connect tree roots and allow them to share nutrients and communicate. She learns about the importance of leaving deadwood for cavity nesting birds and small mammals. She learns about the maple borer beetle and other pests, about ice storm damage and how to help trees recover. But she also learns practical skills. Samuel teaches her to use the chainsaw safely, how to fell a dead tree so it falls exactly where you want it, how to split wood efficiently. He teaches her to sharpen tools, to maintain equipment, to make small repairs. He shows her the financial records, explains the business side of the operation, the costs and revenues, the customers, the regulations they must follow. Helen, meanwhile, teaches Emma the kitchen skills she'll need, not just cooking, though that too, but specifically the art of testing syrup, of judging quality by taste and color and smell, of knowing when a batch is perfect and when something is slightly off. They spend afternoons together in the kitchen, Helen sharing decades of knowledge, Emma absorbing it like dry earth soaking up rain. As April deepens and the days grow warmer, the maples leaf out, their branches covering in fresh green. The sugar bush transforms from the bare bones of winter to the full leafy canopy of spring. Emma walks through it on a warm afternoon and marvels at the change. Just weeks ago, these trees were sleeping, dormant. Now they're vibrantly alive, photosynthesizing, growing, preparing for another year. One evening at dinner, Samuel spreads a map across the kitchen table, a detailed plan of the farm showing every maple tree. "We need to start thinking about the future," he says. "These trees here," he points to a section on the south slope, "are all over 100 years old, still producing well, but they won't last forever. We should be planting new trees now in the gaps and clearings, so they'll be ready to tap in 40 years when these old ones are gone." Together, they mark locations for new plantings, discuss varieties, plan the future. Emma finds herself thinking in terms of decades now, of her children someday walking among trees she planted, of a continuity that extends far beyond her own lifetime. It is humbling and exhilarating at once. As spring turns toward summer, Emma realizes she hasn't thought about her old life, the city, the job, the apartment, in weeks. That life seems to belong to someone else now, a past self she's shed like a snake shedding skin. She emails her roommates to arrange for her belongings to be shipped, writes to her former employer to formally resign. She feels no regret, only relief and rightness. One warm May evening, as the sun sets behind the western hills, painting the sky in shades of coral and lavender, Emma sits on the farmhouse porch with her grandparents. They rock gently in their chairs, listening to the chorus of birdsong that fills the air. Wood thrushes and hermit thrushes, their flute-like calls echoing through the forest. "I've been thinking about next season," Emma says. "There are some improvements we could make to the tubing system, more efficient ways to collect the sap, and I'd like to expand our retail presence, maybe set up at more farmers markets, reach more customers directly." Samuel and Helen exchange glances, small smiles playing at their lips. "Sounds good," Samuel says. "The farm is yours as much as ours now. Your ideas, your energy, that's what will carry it forward." Emma feels a surge of emotion, gratitude and love, and something like belonging, deep and bone-sure. She looks out at the darkening landscape, at the maple trees standing sentinel on the hills, and knows she has found her home, her purpose, her place in the long chain of people who have loved and tended this land. As darkness falls and the first fireflies begin their blinking dance across the lawn, the three of them sit in comfortable silence, rocking slowly, breathing in the soft spring air. Tomorrow will bring new work, new challenges, new joys. But for now, there is just this moment, perfect and complete, needing nothing more. Summer arrives with its own rhythms and demands. The sugar bush, so central to their lives during the spring, now stands full and green, the maples engaged in their slow work of photosynthesis, building strength and storing sugars for next year's sap run. But while the trees rest, there is no rest for Emma and Samuel. Summer is when they prepare for the next season, when they make improvements and repairs, when they build the foundation that will support next spring's work. June mornings arrive early and soft, the air already warm by the time Emma wakes. She has settled completely into farm life now, her days shaped by the sun and the seasons rather than by clocks and calendars. She wakes with the light, dresses in work clothes that are becoming comfortable and familiar, and joins her grandfather for coffee on the porch before the day's heat sets in. Their first project is repairing and upgrading the tubing system in the sugar bush. They start at the top of the hillside, where the main lines run down to the collection tank, and work their way through the forest, section by section. Emma learns to spot problems she would have missed a few months ago. A line rubbing against a tree trunk, a connection that's slightly loose, a place where debris might collect and cause blockage. The tubing needs to slope downhill at just the right angle, Samuel explains as they work. Too steep, and the sap flows too fast, creates turbulence. Too shallow, and it doesn't flow well enough. You're looking for about 2% grade, just enough to let gravity do its work smoothly. They spend long days in the forest, surrounded by green and birdsong. Emma discovers she enjoys this work, the problem-solving aspect of it, the physical labor, the satisfaction of improving the system. Her hands develop calluses, her muscles grow stronger. She feels herself becoming more competent, more capable with each passing day. In the evenings after dinner, Samuel teaches Emma about the business records. They sit at the dining room table with ledgers and spreadsheets, going through years of data, production numbers, weather patterns, prices, costs. Samuel has kept meticulous records for 45 years, and now Emma begins to see the patterns in them, to understand the variables that affect production, to think strategically about the operation. Sugar content in the sap varies year to year, Samuel explains, pointing to columns of numbers. Some years it takes 35 gallons to make a gallon of syrup. Other years it takes 50. Weather affects it, but so do other things we don't fully understand. You learn to accept that uncertainty, to work with it rather than against it. Helen joins them some evenings, adding her own perspective. She is the one who manages the retail side of the business, who maintains relationships with customers, who knows which restaurants buy their syrup and which specialty shops carry it. People want to know where their food comes from, she tells Emma. They want connection, authenticity. That's what we offer, real maple syrup made the traditional way by people who care about the trees and the land. Never forget to tell that story. One hot July afternoon, Emma and Samuel drive to a neighboring farm where a sugar maker is selling equipment. The man is retiring, closing his operation, and Samuel has heard he has a good evaporator for sale. They arrive at a farm similar to theirs. Old buildings, maple-covered hills, the familiar sugar house with its cupola. The retiring sugar maker, a man named Frank Dixon, shows them his evaporator. It's newer than theirs, more efficient, with better features for temperature control. Samuel and Frank talk for a long time, discussing technical details, comparing notes on the past season. Emma listens, learning, absorbing the shared language of sugar makers, the common experiences that bind these people together. 48 years I've been doing this, Frank says, his voice carrying both pride and sadness. But my kids moved away, took other paths. No one to pass it on to. The land's been sold to a conservation trust. At least the trees will be protected even if no one taps them anymore. On the drive home, Samuel is quiet, and Emma knows he's thinking about Frank's situation, about how many family operations end when there's no one to carry them forward. She reaches over and puts her hand on his arm. "That won't happen to Millbrook Farm," she says quietly. "I'm here. I'm staying." Samuel nods, not trusting himself to speak, but Emma sees the gratitude in his eyes, the relief. They have given each other a gift, she realizes. She has given him continuity, a future for the land he loves, and he has given her purpose, a place where she fits, a life that feels true and right. August brings different work, harvesting vegetables from Helen's garden, putting up food for winter, making repairs to buildings before cold weather returns. Emma learns to can tomatoes, to make pickles, to freeze beans and corn. She discovers satisfaction in this work too, this provision for the future, this connection to the rhythms that sustained humans for thousands of years before grocery stores and restaurants. She also begins planning for next season in earnest. She draws up proposals for improvements to the sugarhouse, researches new filtering equipment, investigates different bottling options. She creates a website for the farm, something her grandparents never had, with photos and stories and information about how to buy their syrup. She discovers she enjoys this creative work, this bridge building between the traditional operation and the modern world. One warm evening in late August, the Whitfield family visits for dinner. Their children run through the fields catching fireflies, while the adults sit on the porch talking and laughing. Emma watches the children and imagines for the first time a future that includes her own family, children who will grow up on this farm, who will learn to love the maples as she has learned to love them. "You're settling in well," Mrs. Whitfield says to Emma. "It's good to see. The farm needs young energy, new ideas, but it also needs someone who understands the old ways, who respects what's come before." That's a rare combination. As summer wanes and the first hints of autumn appear, a touch of color in the leaves, a new coolness in the morning air, the angle of the light beginning to change, Emma feels a deep contentment settling over her. She has found what she was searching for without quite knowing she was searching. Not a job or a career, but a life, a way of being in the world that feels aligned with something essential in her nature. September arrives with cool nights and warm days, and the maple trees begin their spectacular transformation. Emma has seen autumn in Vermont before, during childhood visits, but she has never experienced it quite like this. Living in the midst of it, watching the daily changes, seeing the progression from green to gold to crimson to rust. The sugar bush becomes a cathedral of color. The sugar maples turn brilliant orange and red, their leaves glowing in the afternoon sun like stained glass. Emma walks through the forest on a still afternoon and finds herself surrounded by beauty so intense it almost hurts. The blue sky visible through the canopy, leaves drifting down like golden rain, the earth soft with moss and needles beneath her feet. "The leaves are falling," Samuel tells her one morning, returning nutrients to the soil, feeding the mycorrhizal networks, preparing the ground for next spring. Even in dying, they give life. That's the way of things here. This is also the season when they begin taking orders for next year's syrup. Regular customers call or email. Restaurants place their annual orders. Specialty food stores send in their requests. Emma learns this aspect of the business too, learning to manage inventory, to plan production based on anticipated demand, to balance what they've made with what they can sell. In October, Samuel suggests they attend the State Sugar Makers Conference, a gathering held each year where maple producers from across Vermont come together to share knowledge, learn about new techniques, and maintain the community that binds them. Emma is nervous. She still feels new to this world, unsure of her place in it. But Samuel assures her she'll be welcome. The conference is held at a hotel in Burlington, and Emma is surprised by how many people attend. Hundreds of sugar makers, from operations much larger than theirs to small family farms that produce just a few gallons a year. But despite their differences in scale, they all share a common language, common experiences, a common love for the work they do. Emma attends workshops on forest management and climate change adaptation, on marketing and business planning, on new equipment and techniques. She takes pages of notes, asks questions, absorbs information. But more valuable than the formal presentations are the conversations during breaks and meals, the stories shared, the advice offered, the sense of being part of a community that stretches across the state and beyond. She meets young sugar makers like herself, some who have returned to family operations, others who are starting new enterprises, all of them passionate about the work, committed to doing it sustainably and well. They exchange contact information, promising to stay in touch, to share ideas, and support each other. Emma realizes she has found not just a home, but a tribe, a community of people who understand this life she's chosen. One evening at the conference, an older sugar maker gives a keynote speech about the history of maple sugaring in Vermont, about its importance not just economically, but culturally, as a defining element of Vermont identity. He talks about the challenges facing the industry, climate change, bringing earlier springs and more erratic weather, development pressure on rural land, the aging of the sugar maker population. But I'm hopeful, he concludes, because I see young people like many of you here tonight, choosing this life, bringing new energy and ideas while respecting the traditions that have sustained us. You are the future of this industry, the stewards of these forests, the keepers of this tradition. What you do matters, not just for yourselves or your families, but for the land, for the trees, for everyone who depends on you to do this work well. Emma feels tears in her eyes as he speaks. She thinks about the grandmother tree up on the ridge, about all it has witnessed, about the responsibility of caring for such ancient, generous beings. She thinks about the sugar house and the evaporator, about the steam and the sweetness, about the fire that transforms sap into syrup season after season. She thinks about Frank Dixon closing his operation because there was no one to continue it, and feels grateful beyond measure that Millbrook Farm will not share that fate. November brings shorter days and the real cold. The tourists who come to Vermont for fall foliage depart, and the state settles into its quieter, more intimate winter personality. Emma helps prepare the farm for winter, draining water lines that might freeze, stacking firewood near the house, making sure everything is ready for the months ahead. She also begins planning for the next sugaring season in detail. She and Samuel walk through the sugar bush on a cold, overcast day, marking trees that should be tapped for the first time next spring, noting which trees might be getting too old to tap, discussing where they should focus their efforts. "We'll tap about 1,500 trees this year," Samuel says. "Could tap more, but I like to keep it manageable, keep the quality high. This isn't about maximizing production. It's about doing the work right, treating the trees with respect, making the best syrup we can." Emma nods, understanding. She has learned that there are different philosophies in the maple industry, different approaches and priorities. Some operations are huge, industrial, focused on volume and efficiency. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not what Millbrook Farm is about. They are a small family operation, focused on quality and sustainability, on maintaining a connection to tradition and to the land. That's their niche, their identity, and Emma wants to honor that while also bringing her own vision and energy to the work. As December arrives and the first snow begins to fall, Emma stands at the kitchen window one morning, looking out at the white-covered landscape, at the bare trees standing dark against the snow. In a few months, the sap will flow again and another season will begin. But for now, there is winter, quiet and cold and beautiful in its own way. She pours herself coffee and thinks about how much has changed since last winter, when she arrived at the farm uncertain and restless, searching for something she couldn't name. She has found it now, found herself, found her purpose, found her home. The journey isn't over. There is still so much to learn, so many seasons ahead, but she knows the path now, knows where she's going and why. Outside, a cardinal lands on the bird feeder, its red feathers brilliant against the white snow. Emma watches it, sipping her coffee, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over her, like the snow settling on the fields. This is her life now, simple and grounded, connected to the earth and the seasons, to the trees and the work they require. It is enough. It is everything. Winter settles over the farm like a thick quilt, muffling sounds, simplifying the landscape to its essential forms. The days are short, darkness falling by late afternoon, but Emma has learned to love this season too, to appreciate its particular gifts, the quiet, the stillness, the invitation to rest and reflect. The sugar house stands empty and cold, but it is not forgotten. On clear days, Emma walks down to check on it, to make sure snow hasn't damaged the roof, to ensure everything is secure. She stands inside the quiet building, remembering the heat and steam and activity of sugaring season, already anticipating its return. Much of the winter work happens inside, in the warmth of the farmhouse. Samuel teaches Emma the art of equipment maintenance, how to rebuild pumps, how to repair the evaporator, how to prepare everything so it will work flawlessly when needed. They spread parts on the workshop table, cleaning and oiling and replacing worn components, working with the careful attention of people who know their tools are precious, essential to their livelihood. Emma also spends hours with the business records, analyzing data from past seasons, planning for the future. She creates spreadsheets tracking sap production by section of forest, trying to identify patterns, to understand which areas are most productive and why. She researches markets, explores opportunities to expand their customer base, drafts marketing materials. But winter is also a season for rest, for reading, for the kind of slow living that modern life rarely permits. Emma discovers books in the farmhouse library about forestry and ecology, about the history of maple sugaring, about Vermont and its agricultural traditions. She reads in the evenings, curled in an armchair near the wood stove, while snow falls softly outside the windows. Helen teaches her to knit, and Emma discovers she enjoys the meditative quality of it, the repetitive motion, the slow creation of something useful and beautiful from simple materials. She works on a scarf while Helen knits a sweater, their needles clicking softly in the quiet kitchen, conversation flowing easily or lapsing into comfortable silence. "Your grandfather was like you are now," Helen says one evening, when he first came back to the farm after college, full of ideas and energy, wanting to make changes. His father was skeptical at first, worried Samuel would try to change too much, lose what made the operation special. But Samuel was smart. He listened more than he talked, learned the old ways thoroughly before suggesting new ones. He honored what came before, even as he moved things forward. Emma nods, understanding the lesson. She has ideas for the farm, visions of what it might become, but she knows she must build on a solid foundation of knowledge and respect for tradition. Change for its own sake has no value, but thoughtful evolution, grounded in understanding, that's what will keep the farm thriving for another generation. January brings deep cold, temperatures dropping below zero at night, the world locked in winter's grip. But even in this dormancy, life persists. Emma walks through the sugar bush on a bright, cold afternoon and sees the tracks of deer and foxes, the places where rabbits have been feeding on bark. She sees chickadees and nuthatches working the tree trunks, searching for insects hidden in bark crevices. Life finds a way, even in the coldest season. She stops at the grandmother tree, brushing snow from its massive trunk. The tree stands as it has for centuries, patient and enduring. Emma puts her hand on the bark, feeling its rough texture, its solidity. She thanks the tree silently, as Samuel does, acknowledging its presence, its gift, its long life. On particularly cold nights, when the thermometer drops to 10 below or colder, Emma lies in bed, listening to the trees crack and pop, a sound like gunshots echoing across the valley. Samuel has explained that this is the sound of ice expanding in the wood, of sap frozen solid, of the trees enduring the stress of extreme cold. "They're tougher than they look," he said. "They've survived worse winters than this, and they'll survive many more after we're gone." February arrives, and with it, the first stirrings of anticipation. The days are growing longer, the sun gaining strength. It's still winter, still cold, but change is coming. Emma begins preparing in earnest for sugaring season, checking equipment one final time, ordering supplies, contacting customers to confirm their orders. She and Samuel walk through the sugar bush on a bright February afternoon, planning this year's tapping. They will add 50 new taps, Emma's suggestion, in a section of younger maples that are now big enough. They will also try a new filtering system she researched, one that should give them clearer syrup with less labor. Small improvements, evolutionary rather than revolutionary, but movement forward nonetheless. "Feels good to have you here," Samuel says as they walk between the trees. "Knowing the farm has a future, knowing these trees will be cared for, that's a gift you've given us, Emma. More valuable than you might realize." Emma feels her throat tighten with emotion. "You gave me a gift too," she says. "A place to belong, a life that makes sense. I was so lost before I came here, and I didn't even know it. The farm saved me as much as I might be saving it. They stand together in the quiet forest, two figures dwarfed by the ancient trees surrounding them, linked by love and purpose and the shared commitment to steward this land well. Above them, a raven calls, its voice echoing off the hills. The sun slants through the bare branches, casting intricate shadows on the snow. Soon, very soon, the sap will flow again. Another season will begin, another cycle in the endless turning of the year. Emma feels ready for it, prepared not just with knowledge and skill, but with something deeper, a sense of belonging, of rightness, of being exactly where she should be, doing exactly what she's meant to do. The morning Emma and Samuel begin tapping for the new season. Dawn's clear and cold, the temperature hovering right at freezing, perfect conditions. Emma wakes before her alarm, too excited to sleep, and finds her grandfather already up, standing at the kitchen window with his coffee, watching the sky lighten. "Ready?" he asks, and she nods, unable to keep the smile from her face. This is her second season, but it feels like the first real one. The first where she knows what she's doing, where she's not just helping, but actively participating, bringing her own knowledge and vision to the work. They gather their equipment and walk out to the sugar bush together, their boots crunching on crusty snow. The air is sharp and clean, and Emma can see her breath in silver clouds. She feels fully alive, every sense heightened. The smell of cold air and pine, the sound of chickadees calling, the sight of sunlight breaking over the eastern ridge and illuminating the tops of the maple trees. They work together through the morning, falling into the rhythm Emma remembers from last year, but with new confidence, new competence. She drills tap holes now without supervision, judges placement and angle with the practiced eye of someone who understands the work. Samuel watches her approvingly, offering suggestions but mostly letting her work independently. By midday, they have tapped 300 trees, and already the collection tank is beginning to fill. Emma opens the lid and listens to the musical drip of sap, that sound she has been anticipating for months. It's really happening. Another season beginning, another cycle turning, the trees offering their gift once more. That evening, they light the fire in the sugar house for the first time this year. Emma has done much of the preparation herself, and she feels a surge of pride as the fire catches and grows, as the evaporator begins to heat, as the first sap of the season starts to boil. Samuel stands beside her watching, and she knows he is pleased, not just with her work, but with the knowledge that this tradition will continue, that the farm has a future. The weeks that follow are busy and full, each day bringing its own challenges and satisfactions. Emma manages the sugar house operation more independently this year, while Samuel focuses on maintenance and repair, on managing the sap collection, on the 100 other tasks that sugaring season requires. They work as a team, complementing each other's strengths, covering each other's weaknesses. Neighbors and friends stop by as they did last year, drawn by the sweet smell and the warm welcome. But this year, Emma finds herself in a different role, not just the granddaughter helping out, but a sugar maker in her own right, someone who can answer questions and explain the process with authority. People notice the change, comment on it, and Emma feels herself stepping more fully into her identity, claiming this life as her own. The syrup they make this year is excellent, clear and sweet, with a delicate flavor that comes from careful attention to every step of the process. Emma bottles it with pride, labels each bottle with the farm's name and the date, knowing that this syrup carries not just sweetness, but story, tradition, care. One afternoon, late in the season, as Emma tends the fire alone in the sugar house, she has a moment of profound clarity. She understands now what drew her to this life, what made her stay. It isn't romance or nostalgia for a simpler time. It's something deeper, a need for work that matters, for a connection to something larger than herself, for a life lived in partnership with the natural world rather than in opposition to it. The maples give their sap freely, asking nothing in return except that they be cared for, that their health be considered, that they be allowed to continue their slow, patient existence. It is a relationship based on reciprocity and respect, on recognition that humans are not separate from nature, but part of it, dependent on it, responsible to it. This is what Emma has found here, not escape from the modern world, but a different way of being in it, a way that honors old wisdom while embracing necessary change, that values sustainability over growth, quality over quantity, relationship over transaction. As the season draws toward its close, as the maples begin to bud and the sap takes on its bitter end-of-season taste, Emma feels not sadness, but satisfaction. They have made good syrup, maintained the trees in good health, strengthened the farm's position for the future. They have done the work well, and that is enough. The final sugaring off party is larger this year, more people coming to celebrate, to taste sugar on snow, to enjoy the warmth and community that the sugar house provides. Emma moves through the crowd, talking with customers and friends, telling stories about the season, feeling completely at home in this role. Late in the evening, after most people have left, Emma stands outside the sugar house with her grandparents, looking up at stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The season is over, but the farm continues, the trees continue, the cycle continues. Next year will bring another season, and the year after that, and the years after that. Emma will be here for them, doing this work she loves, caring for these trees, keeping this tradition alive. Thank you, she says quietly, to her grandparents, to the trees, to the land itself, to whatever forces brought her here and helped her find her way home. Samuel puts his arm around her shoulders, and Helen takes her hand, and they stand together in the gathering darkness, 3 generations bound by love and land and shared purpose. The sugar house behind them glows warm and golden, its windows lit, its work complete for another year. Above them, stars wheel in their ancient patterns, the same stars that have looked down on this farm since its beginning, that will look down on it long after they are gone. Inside the farmhouse, the grandfather clock chimes softly. Outside, spring peepers begin their evening chorus. The world turns on its axis, seasons change, life continues its endless cycle of death and renewal, ending and beginning. And here, on this small farm, tucked into the Vermont hills, 3 people stand together in grateful silence, honoring what has been, celebrating what is, trusting what will be. The work is done. The syrup is made. The trees have given their gift. Another season complete, another chapter written in the long story of this place. Emma breathes deeply, filling her lungs with cool spring air, and feels peace settle over her like a blessing. This is home. This is enough. This is everything. And as night falls completely, and stars fill the sky as the spring peepers sing and the trees stand silent and strong in the darkness. Emma walks with her grandparents back to the farmhouse, back to the warmth and light, back to the life she has chosen and that has chosen her. The door closes behind them and the farm settles into quiet, patient, timeless, waiting for next season, for the next generation, for the continuation of this good work that has no end. May these words carry you gently into sleep, as sweetly and surely as sap flows from maple trees in spring. Rest now, dear listener. Rest deeply. Tomorrow will bring its own gifts, its own work, its own grace. But for now, just rest, just sleep, just be.